Before I begin today's episode, I'd just like to say what an absolutely fantastic time we had at CrimeCon Glasgow this year. We absolutely loved the fact it's only one track and we're all on the day's journey together. It was also great to meet in person Sam and Caitlin from the Crime Pod and Marty and Effie from Mum's Mysteries and Murder. And they're as lovely and fun in person as they were when we recorded together. We also met some other podcasters for the first time. There was Hannah and Kate from Don't Blame the Mum podcast, Wendy from Foul Play Crime Series, Tristan from A Murder Without End, who was there with his soon-to-be husband Liam, with the pair actually marrying the following day, congratulations, and Robbie from Cold Tapes, who I'm going to be speaking to in our episode released next week, to tell us more about Cold Tapes and how you can not only win the title of Super Sleuth of the Year 2024, but also be in with a chance of winning £10,000. I'd also love to give a huge shout out to some of our amazing listeners who we met on the day, including Julie from York, Connie and Dan from Pennycook, and Katrina, who suggested we cover the case of 2-year-old Liam Fee, who was killed by his parents, which we will in the future. But thank you to everyone who came to say hello on the day, and thank you to each and every one of you for continuing to listen and supporting our wee show. In this episode, you'll be hearing from Steven Keogh, who was a former police officer with London's Metropolitan Police for 30 years, with over half of that time spent as a Scotland Yard detective investigating murder and terrorism. Since retiring, Steven has written 2 fantastic books, Murder Investigation Team, How Killers Are Caught, and Murder Investigation Team, Jack the Ripper, a 21st century investigation. And he now has his own TV series called Secrets of a Murder Detective on the True Crime Channel. So Steve, it's great to have you on the podcast finally.
Yeah, Dawn, it's really good to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. Much appreciated.
No, so we met, what did we meet in 2022 at Glasgow CrimeCon it was?
It was, yes.
And that was one of your first speaking events, wasn't it? Was that the first?
It was the second. I'd done London. Well, in terms of CrimeCon, I don't know others, but in terms of CrimeCon, yeah, I'd done London that year and then did Glasgow. Look, don't tell anyone. This is a secret.
God, you always do this to me. The amount of secrets I've got. And the other podcast as well.
Right, your listeners can know, but no one else can know. All right.
Okay. Right. Okay.
I like Glasgow better than London.
Yeah, I do as well.
But don't tell anyone.
It's a bit late for that. I do as well. It's not so busy, is it? It's nice.
It's more intimate, isn't it?
Aye, yes.
And especially as a speaker. So when you're speaking in London, and there are 4 stages. Like last year in London was the first time I had one on my own. And you just panic that nobody's going to turn up, and you're looking to see who else is on.
You don't have that.
You don't have that in Glasgow. They can't go anywhere unless. I'll tell you, it's even worse if you're looking at an empty room in Glasgow because they've just decided to go to the bar instead.
Did you have a good time though? I enjoyed it. Your session.
Yeah, I was winging it. So, yeah, I had no idea how it was going to go because you saw I opened it up to the audience and it was all going to be dependent on. Big mistake. I thought I did it for a reason. I thought it'd be nice rather than me just walking on stage and talking to people. It'd be nice to get people involved, and it seemed to go down well. Although there was one fella I didn't understand a word he was saying, who was trying to get me in trouble. I think he had an agenda.
He wasn't. Nah. He just wasn't very eloquent in what he was trying to say, I don't think.
No. I'll tell you what, the maddest thing in CrimeCon, which I really wasn't happy with, was everyone I spoke to had my face come on their lanyard looking back at me.
Yes, it was your show, wasn't it? It was just your event, Steve.
And there's someone with a face for radio. You really don't want your face plastered everywhere.
But they made it worse because they divided it up into wee squares and made it all offset.
It's supposed to be Post-it notes, so it's like different Post-it notes with writing on, but it just makes me look even worse.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's the Steve show. But who would have thought 2 years later from when I first met you then, your second speaking gig, and look at you now, your own show.
No.
Secrets of a Murder Detective.
It's all a bit mental.
Would you have thought it?
It's all a bit
Isn't
mental.
It?
I mean, honestly, Dawn, if you'd said this to me a couple of years ago, I would accuse you of being on some sort of substance because I didn't even have this in my head at all that I wanted to have my own TV show. It wasn't even on my radar, like, anything like that. And things just sort of happen. It's all happened to me, Dawn. People have made it happen. I've got no control anymore.
But you love it though, don't you? You enjoy the show because you said you weren't going to write any more books. You like the TV shows.
Yeah, writing books is hard work. I mean, if any of your listeners have written a book, they'll empathise with that, because it's a lot of work. It's an awful lot of work. Whereas the TV show that I did was literally not much different to this. I just sat down on a table opposite someone and we had a chat. I mean, that's how easy is that?
I know, it was good. Well, I'm disappointed because I loved your books. I really enjoyed your books, so I'm disappointed. But yeah, the show's good as well.
Well, I was never going to write two. It was only ever going to be one. And it was just the Jack the Ripper thing it was a seed was put in my mind. I dabbled on YouTube when I retired, and I don't really do it now. I don't do it. And I had a lot of American subscribers. We had a really nice community, and we'd have lots of live sessions, and they'd all come on, and it was really good. And they were asking if I would do something about Jack the Ripper. And it was only when I started to look into it that sparked, whereas before I had no interest at all, certainly not in writing another book. And yeah, they'd have to pay me a lot of money to write another one. They won't, so it ain't going to happen.
So anyway, people that haven't watched your show yet, tell us what they can expect.
Yeah, so it's called Secrets of a Murder Detective. And essentially, so everything I've done since I've left the police is about sharing knowledge. So the programme is exactly that. It's about trying to give people a glimpse behind the curtain, if you like, of what it's actually like to investigate murder. Because what I think sometimes people don't understand. No, that sounds a bit patronising. People sort of don't often give detectives. They don't treat them as human beings. They're like these robots that just investigate murders. But it's not like that. It's a really personal thing. It can be really challenging. It's especially when you're dealing with things like deaths of children, and there's some really sad cases that we feature. And it's just to give people a flavour of what it actually is like to investigate murders, and tacking onto that is just sort of imparting a little bit of knowledge around the investigations, just treating... I think true crime viewers are a lot more sophisticated sometimes than people give credit for. And so what we're trying to do is just to show people, give people the credit that we can explain things to them on a bit of a more technical level, and they can understand that. And it's something I don't think gets done on other shows. Most of the true crime shows that I've seen, and I've been on a few, when they invite you on to help them out, and they follow a bit of a formula, and they're telling a story, and they might have a couple of talking heads and a bit of an expert come in, but all they're doing is actually telling the story of the crime. So we do tell the story of the crime, but we try and do it from a perspective of people that were there. We don't have a narrator, so there's nobody sort of over telling the story over them. The story comes from the people that were there, the people involved. Often it'll be family members. I think from all the feedback I'm getting from people within the industry, it's a new way of doing it. It's a new format that seems to be going down well.
And like you said, it makes the detectives not seem like robots. It gives them a bit of personality as well. That's what I really enjoyed about it. It's still very victim focused, but you got to see a bit of the detective side in it from their point of view. And there was one detective, remember I messaged you when I watched, it was episode 3. It was Jim Dickey, and I was like, I bet he's the right character. So it was nice to see that side of it as well, see them.
100%, Dawn, yeah, 100%. And what you said about being victim focused is right as well. So, yeah, I mean, I didn't mention that, but that's really important to us in that when I investigated murders, it was about the victim, and it was about the victim's family. And we do that. And the best way you can do that, I think, is by hearing it from the people that loved them, the people, their mothers, brothers, sons, etc. So we've got those, because it's all well and good one of the detectives saying that was what the person was like, but you can't beat hearing it from somebody that actually knew them when they were alive. So you can't always get family members to come on, because it must be very hard for them, mustn't it, to go on TV and talk about your murdered loved one.
Of course. You didn't talk about the detective, Dickie. I wanted to hear more about the personality. Yeah, he really stuck with me. He was really good. How much of a hand did you have in bringing the detectives and bringing everybody in? Did you choose ones that you could click with better? How did it work?
Some I'd worked with before, so I invited them on. There were probably about 3 or 4 that I'd met and knew and invited them onto the show, and they just recently retired. Jim, I hadn't come across Jim. We're different eras, so we had a bit of crossover. I was on the anti-terrorist branch when the London bombings happened in 2005, and I think he was a detective superintendent at the time, and he had a role at the the mortuary, I think. So we had a bit of crossover, but not really. We weren't on murder teams at the same time. One of the interesting things talking to him is I think he must have stopped investigating murders around 2002, and I started in 2009, which doesn't sound like a lot, does it? 7 years. But in actual fact, a lot had changed in those 7 years in terms of the procedures that we followed and the technology and advances in DNA. Because DNA really was sort of, I mean, it was there, but it was nowhere near as advanced as it is now. And telephones were, I mean, people had telephones, but they're very different to the phones than we had sort of when I retired in 2021. So, yeah, so from the time I left, so I suppose it was nearly 20 years from when I left, when he left investigating murders, but there was a huge amount of change.
So tell me, you said earlier on that you hadn't met a lot of them, but you'd met some of them. So what was it like sitting down across from them? Are you just that easy to talk to? Was it easy or was it difficult to pull the information out? What was it like?
I think it worked really well. And I think all of them, there wasn't one that didn't say, I don't think, that they preferred that format. A lot of these true crime shows, the local police won't engage, the investigating police won't engage. So they invite detectives on to talk from their experience. I think the majority of us that were on there had done that. And when you do that, what you have is a producer from the TV show will sit down with you. And they're trying really to get you to say what they want you to say because they need to tell the story. Whereas our format, it's completely unscripted. I just talk through the investigation with them. And I get to understand from what they're telling me, the important bits and what I think would be interesting for viewers and what might be less known about certain aspects of investigation. So our conversations lasted 3 to 4 hours. I mean, obviously it's not 3 to 4 hours on the TV show. So there's lots cut out, but it allowed us to really get deep into the investigation. And the way I did it, Dawn, I interviewed them as if when I interview I used to interview suspects and witnesses. I used the same technique.
The same technique? The same one with the scary eyes and the invading the space?
No, not that one. Yeah, no. I didn't use that sort of putting pressure on anyone. But the structure. So when you're interviewing a witness or a suspect, there are different stages to it. And the first one is tell me about it. And essentially what you're looking for them to do is dump and then just tell you everything. And then you'll say, oh, thank you for that. So we're just going to go back over that now and we'll go over each section, but in more detail. In witness and suspect interviews, they call it fine-grained detail. That's the phraseology they use. So it's exactly that. So by the time they'd dumped on me with everything that had happened, I had a good understanding of what had gone on. And then I can walk through it in a bit of a more detailed way and then sort of really drill down into the bits that I thought were most interesting. So it was exactly the same technique I've done for however many years in the police. So I had the structure, but I also had the bond with them because they knew that I'd been there too. So it was a sort of a peer-to-peer talk. So yeah, I think it worked really well. And they were all very nice. They were all very nice. They're all men. That wasn't intentional.
John, I never even noticed that until you said it. You're right. It was all men.
It was all men. And it wasn't intentional. It was just availability, people willing to come on, because it's very difficult to get the police to engage if they're still working in the police, because their forces say no. It's very difficult. So it was much easier for us to go with retired detectives who haven't got those constraints on them, that they've got the press bureau people over their shoulder looking at what they're saying. So you could have a more honest conversation.
Just because I'm nosy, why do you think it is that they don't want current detectives or police officers to speak to anybody?
Yeah, I mean, the Metropolitan Police don't. I don't know if this is true, but I've been told that, I think it might be called the Met on BBC 9 o'clock on a Monday or whatever it was. They've got a sort of fly on the wall documentary. I've been told by a few people that they won't engage because they've got the agreement with the BBC. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I've not heard that officially. Okay. But it doesn't explain all the other forces.
Yeah.
And we did approach some, but they don't want to. I don't know whether they've found that it's got them in trouble in the past or what, or out of their control. I don't know.
Maybe control, yeah. Frightened they can't control the narrative, maybe.
Exactly. But there's still plenty of cases around, plenty of people willing to speak about them.
So did you go into the show doing no research? I mean, obviously the first episode one was one that you were involved in.
Yeah.
Which was, that was really sad, that episode, watching you get so emotional.
It was really hard. I mean, Dawn, as a police officer, I think we all deal with it exactly the same way. We just compartmentalise, we lock it away, and you don't deal with it, you don't talk about it. So when Richard and I were sat down talking about it, for both of us, it was the first time we'd done that. And where we were there for the 3 or 4 hours and we were sort of going through it in that real detail, it was like we were there. And the bit that got me upset was we were clinging on to the hope that the boys were still alive. So for your listeners that don't know, Cyan Blake, people keep picking me up on that it's Cyan. Yeah, she called herself Cyan. It's spelt Sian. So she called herself Cyan.
Yeah.
So she and her 2 boys were murdered by their husband, buried in a garden, and he fled to Africa. And when it came into us, it was a missing persons inquiry. And pretty quickly, we'd identified that the bungalow that I lived in was clearly a crime scene, and there were traces of blood that had been painted over by Simpson Kent. So we knew that something tragic had happened there, but we were always clinging on to this hope that it wasn't the boys. That as a parent, okay, we understand like these things can happen domestic violence is far too prevalent. You understand that can happen. But for a father to kill his children is rare. And we were just clinging on to that hope that he'd put them with family members. So we would actually, Richard went to his mum, the officer I was talking to, he went to see his mum, the kids weren't there. We were just trying to find the kids. But when that call came in from the crime scene, that actually we'd found a grave, and in the grave were all 3. I mean, it's undoubtedly it was a low point in my career, and reliving that with Richard was hard.
Yeah, it stood out for me because I remember you at London, and somebody said to you, have you had counselling? And you were like, no, I don't feel anything. You were like, no, nothing.
I was at the 7-7 one.
Yes.
Yeah.
She was determined you were going to need counselling.
She was convinced I had PTSD, didn't she?
Yes. And then from that, and then watching that, it really hit home. I was like, God, you are human after all. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll always say this. Anyone who's heard me speaking before, it's children. And as a parent, I think it's just as a human being, seeing children come to harm is hard. And yes, I could cope with looking at most crime scenes and death, etc. But in a way, I always found it comforting that I was affected by children, because you do, especially after 7-7, and people were saying to me, "You're okay," and I started to wonder why I was so okay. Like, I mean, the stuff I did, maybe I should be affected. But then when you deal with the children, you realise, well, actually, no, I just deal with it. But the children show you that you've still got that human side that can be affected, and in a weird way I find that comforting, that I'm not some psychopath that doesn't care, you know what I mean?
No, you're not. You're all right after all. So I've enjoyed watching the episodes, just getting to know the behind the scenes. I love that, getting to know what's actually going on in an investigation, what you go through, what happens, the challenges you face. Has it turned out the way you imagined it was when you were first approached back then?
So it was weird. So I was first approached actually where we met in Glasgow, and I was on stage talking, who was I with? Colin Sutton, Shaham Daz and Jim Fraser. And I was a bit sort of like, oh God, no one's going to know me here. So like, all these faces from true crime. So I thought I better introduce myself a little bit. So I had my first book out then. So I described my book. And the person in charge of, it was CBS Reality then, she came up to me afterwards and said, oh, when you described your book, it sounded like it could translate to a TV show. So then she said, like, why don't we meet and discuss it? And we did. And they got to the point where they were like, yeah, we want to make something with you, which is a bit different. It's normally the other way around. It's normally the production companies pitch the TV channel, say, we've got this idea, can we make it with you? And it was the other way around. So we got 3 production companies pitched the TV channel, and they were all very kind of different ideas. And the company I went with, Phoenix Television, to be honest, their original idea wasn't what it turned out to be. And it was only when we were sitting down and we were discussing what would make what we're doing different. And the biggest difference would be, and it has to be, is my relationship with the investigators. I understood what they've been through. So when we realised that, when that dawned on us, like, well, we need to make the focal point of the show me sitting down with them and having that conversation. So, and then it was sort of built around that. So once we knew that, then the rest of the show was built around that.
Okay. So has your vision, has it been realised then? Are you happy with it? Has it been well received?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. Really happy with it. The thing is, we've made it for a certain type of true crime fan. One that's got something going on upstairs, you know what I mean? One who's got some intelligence, who can appreciate it for what it is. We're not playing to the lowest common denominator, you know what I mean? We're not sensationalising anything. We've got secrets in the title, but it's not the sort of secrets that would upset the family. Yeah. It's always about, and everything I've done since I've left, it's about sharing knowledge. And that's what I see when I see the programme. And that's the feedback I get from people that appreciate that actually, yeah, you're treating us in a way that not many other shows do, because you're giving us the credit that we're going to understand, and you know, we don't have to be spoon-fed. And that's the feedback that I'm getting. But I'm getting it from the people I wanted the programme to go to. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm really pleased. And I was, anybody that came up to me at CrimeCon, I was directing them to the woman from the TV channel saying, you better tell her so we can get season 3.
Oh, there's a season 2.
So we filmed 20 episodes, being 2 seasons. But because of some scheduling issues, another programme missed its deadline or something. So they're putting it back to back. So we filmed 2 seasons, but they're going to be shown back to back.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It's going to feel like it's on forever, Dawn.
That's amazing.
You'll be fed up with it by the end. But yeah, so we did 2 lots of 10, but they're showing them as 1 lot of 20.
Oh my God, that's brilliant. That's really good. There's bound to be a season 3.
I'd like to think so, yeah. And yeah, I mean, every murder's different and everyone's got its own aspect. And also as well, what I'm doing at the moment, work-wise, I'm putting on some online courses for crime writers. And I'm launching that this week so that to help them with the authenticity of their writing. And so as I'm planning the courses, there is just so much. There is so much when it comes to murder investigation. So it's not like we can just run out of things that we can tell people, because we're really just scratching the surface of what goes on in a murder investigation. And there will always be murders that aren't covered. There will always be detectives willing to talk about it. So as long as there's that, I'm hopeful that we can at least squeeze out another season or 2.
Did you speak to the victims' families as well? Were you part of that, or are you just speaking to the detectives?
Yeah, I just spoke to the detectives.
Okay.
So what would normally happen is the detectives we spoke to would speak to the families and or the production company. So every episode, the family gave their okay for it to be on. Not all of them want to be on screen, which again, I said earlier, I completely respect that. But we wouldn't have made any programme if it wasn't with the okay of the family.
Yeah. As you said, it's all about sharing, and that's what you've done since you first started with your first book, Murder Investigation Team. So there was so much in that. I know we're deviating, but even just the little did you knows and the Mythbusters, it was really, I loved that book. So again, anybody that wants to go and delve deeper, there's that book as well.
I really appreciate it, Dawn. So what I think, I wrote a book like my mind works. So if your mind works anything similar to mine, one thing I've learned, when anything you're doing, you can't be all things to all people. So again, my book is written for a certain type of true crime fan, one that really wants to understand what goes on in a murder investigation, the processes. And I mean, it's not just a dry book in terms of it's just processes, also relate it to my own cases. Early on, I did read some reviews, but you learn as an author, stop reading your reviews, because those people that you haven't written to are the ones more likely to go, well, I didn't really like it. And the ones that didn't like it is because their brain didn't work like me.
Yep.
So the way I do, though, I love little facts.
Yep, I love the facts.
I love little bits that you can read. And also as well, a book that you can pick up and put down, and you haven't got to read it all in one go. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's how I wrote it. And loads of people like it. Like it. So yeah, it's something I'm proud of.
Yeah, these people, I read the reviews, and I think they expected it to be more about, the details of the murders and that, but that wasn't what it was about.
100%. I can't remember where I saw this. I saw a comment about the episode with Cy and Blake, and there was a comment somewhere. I can't remember where I read it. And it was from someone saying they wished that we had gone into more details about the injuries of the children.
Yes.
And you're like...
No, that's not what it's about.
You're not our target audience.
No.
So if you don't like it, fine. It's the same with my book. If it's not for you, it's not for you.
Exactly. Absolutely.
You could have the best TV show, film, book in the world ever, and there'll also be someone come along and go, I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
When you write a book, in your mind, you're writing it for, they call it an avatar, you're writing for a certain person. I was writing for you, Dawn.
Well, thanks.
That's who I was writing for.
And you've got my kind of mind. I loved it. It wasn't just one big long story. It was broken up. I loved that. That was just, it's so engaging. That worked for me.
I mean, and that, I'll say, that's who I was writing to. And those that don't like it, I mean, I'm not being like arrogant about it, but you can't please everybody. You can only write to a certain person, and I was writing for you and people like you.
Yeah, I loved it. It's been a pleasure having you on, as always, speaking to you. Oh, it's been a long time we've been speaking now, isn't it? I'm sick to the back teeth of you, but is that us done, do you think?
Everyone else.
What's next for you then? I know you mentioned that you're doing some online writing courses.
Yeah, that's where I'm focusing all my efforts at the moment. So it's online course and membership to help crime writers with their authenticity, and it's like me doing live Q&As with them, and I'm putting my efforts into that because I think there's a real gap where people don't get that real input into their writing unless you're lucky enough to make loads of money from your writing where you can pay an ex-police officer, but then they're not cheap. So yeah, that's where I'm putting my efforts at the moment. So I'm quite excited about where that goes.
Where can people find that?
So everything I do is on my website, stevekeogh.com. Books, TV show, my theories on why people murder people. There's all sorts on there. But yeah, so stevekeogh.com has got everything on.
That's brilliant. Well, I'm looking forward to that as well. I'm sure I'll find a reason to work with you for that too. No, it's been a pleasure having you on, and always nice to speak to you.
Thanks, Dawn. I'll see you in London. You'll be in London?
Yeah, I'll be in London, yeah.
Fantastic. I'll see you there.
I'll see you there.
Take care, Dawn.
As Steven said, you can find out more about him and what he's been up to by visiting stevenkeogh.com. He'll also, along with myself, be at CrimeCon in London in September, so go and get your tickets and don't forget to quote Scottish for your 10% discount. If you enjoyed hearing from Steven and would like to know more about Steven and his career in the police, then why not subscribe to my new podcast, The Blue Way? The Blue Way podcast features an in-depth look into not only why Steven wanted to be a police officer, about his police training and the various jobs he carried out while in the police force, but we also hear from other former police officers from around the world about their route into the police, their training and their careers in the police. The Blue Way podcast will also hear from the family members of former police officers to find out how they coped with having a police officer in their midst, as well as hear about police officers who have been killed or risked their lives in the line of duty. However, we will also hear about officers who have killed in the line of duty or committed crimes themselves, as well as hear from people who have had interactions with the police from a young age and who have served time, as well as hear from those who have been victims of the police. The Blue Way launches on the 22nd of May 2024, and if you'd like to hear more, you can listen or watch on Spotify or YouTube. All links will be in the show notes.
Scottish Murders is a production of Clurin Town.